Peter King from the mmqb.com. Comes out every Monday morning, but you can check the website every day with information, updates as well. And Pete joins us here in the New York City Man Cave. Before we get to what happened last night with the Vikings and the Packers, I was told the reason why the NFL didn't want to have the draft in Los Angeles this year was because then the expectation level of getting a franchise in Los Angeles, it must mean there's going to be a franchise there. That they wanted to do Chicago because they didn't want to build up the anticipation for Los Angeles. Chicago made more sense than Los Angeles this year.
Well, I also think Chicago was more aggressive and more ready-made for the draft this year. Rahm Emanuel's been pushing very, very hard for it. George McCaskey of the Bears pushed very hard for it. Plus, I think it's also sort of a nod to Middle America. And I think the NFL was really comfortable going to a place. Dan, I think what you're saying has some, has some validity. And I think it's also the fact that I think the people in Chicago were the most aggressive. And I think it makes a lot of sense for the NFL to spread it around.
They wanted to go to Chicago.
I think so,
yeah.
Very much. And because they felt like it was going to be a huge deal in Chicago, and it will be.
All right. Last night, is this an aberration with these matchups of expecting these to be competitive games?
Well, I mean, there's three issues here. Number one, you could make the point and very intelligently make the point that if this had been a 7-day break between games for Minnesota, that Teddy Bridgewater could have played in the game and probably would have played in the game if this were a Sunday game. But that the argument to me is not about the fact that there have been 5 routes in 5 games so far and that the average margin of victory is 29 points. Now, and that's terrible, obviously. But last year, in 17 Thursday games, the average margin was 10.4 points, and they had 10 out of 17 single-digit games. Games decided by less than 10 points. So I think it's silly to say that because there have been 5 routes, it's a dumb idea to play Thursday football. The more logical thing to say is it's a dumb idea to play Thursday football consistently because players just can't recover optimally in time. If you want to make that argument, that's a great argument. But I don't think you can make the argument that Thursday night football is a dumb idea because there have been 5 bad games so far.
Well, as I said from the outset, I think Thursday night where you have a good team can look better and a bad team can look worse because you just have less recovery time and preparation time to be able to turn around from a Sunday, then you have Monday, and all of a sudden you're on the road and you're playing a game on Thursday night.
Yeah, but I would also say this, that if Teddy Bridgewater were the quarterback last night, I think he would have gotten out of more trouble than Christian Ponder would have because obviously the Packers were rushing the passer very well. Teddy Bridgewater could have escaped. And, I mean, who knows whether he would have thrown those picks? Probably not, but you just don't know. And so I just think I think you can't make a judgment based on 5 weeks that it's a dumb idea to play Thursday football unless you say, I think it's a dumb idea to play Thursday football anyway because guys just don't have enough recovery time.
Yeah, I don't like Thursday night. I don't think it's fair to the players.
Yeah.
No matter what the games are, you could even have great games, but I just don't think it's fair to. Why are the players allowing this?
Because they could have drawn a line in the sand in their negotiations in 2011 and chose not to.
And I'm always amazed when I hear, when we talk about sports, guys who used to play, Michael Irvin always talks about this, no guaranteed contracts, no loyalty there. Why don't these players fight for guaranteed contracts? If it's so damn important, why don't you make that priority number one? Because they haven't.
In the next CBA, I think that should, if I were a player, that's what I'd be telling D. Smith, that I want guaranteed contracts in the next CBA.
He's Peter King. The website is the mmqb.com. Comes out every morning. Joining us, Dan Patrick Show. Where do you stand on the Patriots?
I watched the Oakland and Kansas City games on tape this week and wrote about it today at the MMQB in my Friday column. And one of the things that I noticed is that, first of all, the offensive line was an absolute total disaster against Oakland. And even though they won the game, Bill Belichick felt that coming into the Kansas City game, he had to change basically every position on the offensive line, because what people don't realize is, yeah, they changed the two guards in the center coming into this game. But what they also did was they had Marcus Cannon, who had been a guard, who played in relief of both Sebastian Vollmer at right tackle and Nate Solder at left tackle, which to me is kind of revolutionary. You think of Solder and Vollmer as your franchise guys there, but they've been playing shaky also. Every guy on that line has been weak so far this year. So Belichick, and imagine making that choice going into Kansas City, one of the two toughest places, Kansas City and Seattle, to play for a road offense.
Yeah.
So that's how bad it was. And the line was a little bit better. They had a couple of glaring weaknesses, but I think one of the other problems they're having right now, Dan, is that Rob Gronkowski has only played 52% of the snaps so far. So if he's only playing half the time, then imagine how much you can concentrate on shutting down Julian Edelman, who clearly is Brady's new Welker. And Brandon LaFell is still trying to get comfortable with Brady. And Brandon LaFell made a couple of big plays in that game Monday night. I think he's going to be good. But I think it's just you've got to get Gronkowski in the game more, and you've got to continue to get better on the offensive line. The center, Brian Stork, they got from Florida State, I think he's going to be okay. But, again, you got to learn on the fly. And here's the other thing, Dan. In 12 days starting on Sunday, they got the Bengals, they got the Bills, and they got the Jets in a 12-day period. And all of those teams rush the passer well, pressure the quarterback well. So, I mean, it's a rough time for New England.
Do you see a scenario where Tom Brady doesn't end his career in New England?
Yes. I think it's entirely possible. I think there's a chance, I don't know what the percentage is, that he's going to want to play longer than Bill Belichick is going to want him to be the quarterback of the Patriots.
What do you think the relationship is between Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo?
I think it's fine. You have to, if you've seen Brady on the sidelines late in games and during games, Dan, don't you see a guy who is surly and angry and unhappy, especially when his team isn't playing well? I see that all the time. And that's why what happened on Monday night didn't surprise me at all.
Well, you've had reports, though, that those two may not be friends. I don't know if you have to be friends. I think we always look back at Favre and Aaron Rodgers.
I think it's really the same thing. Favre looked at Aaron Rodgers as a guy who was brought in to take his job. And this is a little bit different because it's different being the 24th pick versus being the whatever Garoppolo was, the 60th pick. I don't know. But it's a little bit different. And I just view that just as Brett Favre wasn't going to help this guy take his job, I think Brady is going to be very professional and is going to help this guy as much as he can, but he's not going to help him take his job.
But if you're Brady and you're saying, all right, you used a third-round pick on Mallett, a second-round pick on Garoppolo, you've done a horrible job in drafting wide receivers.
Yep.
At what point does Brady say, you're putting me out on an island here? And
Brady is always, you knew when he didn't speak up for Wes Welker, okay, and they got to re-sign Welker, you knew that what Tom Brady does is he takes care of his own business. And he doesn't take care of anybody else's business. He doesn't get involved with, with saying out loud anyway.
But shouldn't
we
he?
should have kept Logan Mankins. It's just not who he is. He just is not made that way. I think I would bet you $100 that Russell Wilson would be the exact same way, and that there would be a lot of quarterbacks who'd be the exact same way. Now, some of them would come out and speak loyally in favor of their other teammates, but he just, he said, this is my job, this is what I do, and I don't stray outside the boundaries of it.
But if I said to him now, I'll give you mulligans. Do you want to fight for Wes Welker? Do you want to fight for Logan Mankins? If I gave him a do-over.
But I'm not even sure that Logan Mankins at this point in his career, who may have a year or two to go, and I think Brady knew that. And again, today, you would like to have Logan Mankins. I'm not sure a month from now that you'd rather have Logan Mankins starting at left guard than Dan Connolly. And I know that sounds insane, but, he was starting to break down and not play that well. And so I view that, that the Welker situation would have been a lot more, should he have spoken up for somebody? I think the Welker situation would have cried out for that more than Mankins.
Why, if you look at the Jets and Bills with what they're doing with their quarterbacks, that you have Michael Vick backing up Geno Smith, but you're not going to go to him, whereas you have Kyle Orton backing up E.J. Manuel. What's more of a dire situation here, quarterback-wise?
Well, I think that, Dan, I'll just tell you one quick story. When I was in Bills camp this summer, you could just tell that there was some shakiness in terms of their faith in E.J. Manuel. You could just tell. Like one day, Doug Whaley, the general manager, had to go out to him at practice and say, listen, stop trying to be perfect. Be a football player. Because I think that the Bills felt last year when he played, the 10 games he played last year, that he was checking down too much, that he was being careful, and he wasn't really trying to make those stick throws that a good quarterback has to make downfield. So I think that this is a culmination of, not being thrilled with him last year and then him not really improving markedly or improving much this year at all. As far as Geno Smith goes, you can just tell that the Jets believe that he's their guy and they want to stick with him as long as they can through some of these tough moments. It's just that, especially if they lose in San Diego, if he plays poorly, I don't know how Rex Ryan at 1-4 looks his team in the face in the locker room and says we're doing everything we can to win.
Before I let you go, why would John Gruden leave broadcasting and go back into coaching?
If he had a really good chance to win, why wouldn't he? You can just see that he wants to coach one day again before he dies. And, the people who say, oh, go get him, Raiders. I mean, are you kidding me? Why in the world would John Gruden go to the Raiders? Unless he thought that Derek Carr was the second coming of Peyton Manning.
If they had a franchise quarterback, I would see him. If you had Andrew Luck or Russell Wilson, a young, established quarterback, I could see Gruden signing up.
Yeah,
maybe.
With the Raiders? I mean, again, I understand, Dan. I really understand that if you thought he was a great quarterback, well, we'll find everything else. But if he's a great quarterback, that's fine. And I do respect that. But they have such a long way to go with the Raiders. And I don't know that they're a little bit better, I think, today because they have Khalil Mack and Derek Carr than they were the day that Reggie McKenzie took over. They're not enough better, to me, to convince John Gruden to come on board.
Good to see you, Pete.
Thank you, Dan.
The website is themmqb.com. Comes out every Monday morning, but Pete has a column for today with the weekend game. You all right there?
Yeah. Just have to stretch like a Bowden polar bear.
You're taking a nap here? All right, we'll come back. We'll get to your phone calls. This is The Dan Patrick Show.